Good afternoon, everyone. How are we all? A little bit of a Wednesday sit down. Couple of things I want to cover today. There seems to be almost a bit of a hate campaign against Tony Bellew. I've been reading a lot in the comments, and the narrative seems to be that Tony Bellew defended Conor Benn, but is calling Beterbiev a drug cheat. Now, I've watched that interview, and I've watched it a few times. To be honest, I can only echo what Tony Bellew is saying, because all the points he brings up, and at no point does he, and he points the fact out a couple of times. He says quite categorically, I'm taking nothing away from Beterbiev. I'm not calling him a cheat because I don't know that. So, and that's what he says. So everyone's saying that he's calling Beterbiev a drug cheat. He's not. But he's just raising some genuine issues, which I agree with. And secondly, he says, he sort of defended Conor Benn, which again he didn't. He never said Conor Benn was innocent. He kind of gave him the benefit of the doubt, and he's doing the same thing with Beterbiev. He's giving him the benefit of the doubt by saying he's not proven to be a drug cheat. But there are issues surrounding this that really need to be talked about. But when we generalise about what someone has said, and we don't really be objective and look at what he said in depth, to generalise is to omit fact, and that's never good. But I just want to read, because this is what he used. This is what Bellew used for the cause for concern and what he talked about on TalkSport. So I'm just going to read the WBC sort of statement on this. So I'm going to quote from this. I'm going to read you this. So I'm going to look at the laptop a bit. So I know you moan at me for not looking at the camera, but I'm going to read it. But anyway, here goes. 2 samples, 1 urine, and another blood, collected on December the 6th, 2023, yielded analytical atypical findings for 5D androstenediol and HGH, human growth hormone. An atypical finding is not a positive result for a banned substance. The World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, defines an atypical finding as a report from a laboratory or other WADA-approved entity which requires further investigation. So it's raised and it needs looking at again. Hence why they've done further testing, right? So he's shown raised on both his urine and blood for both substances, all right? So they go on. This is exactly what the Voluntary Anti-Doping Agency, VADA, which is the entity that administers the WBC's clean boxing program, did in this case. So they administered more tests. So this was December 6th, all right? So we had raised levels on December 6th. In response to the atypical findings, VADA immediately ordered additional anti-doping tests on champion Beterbiev. To that end, VADA caused samples to be collected from champion Beterbiev on December the 15th, 23, December the 21st. So urine was on the 15th, blood and urine was on the 21st, and then again on January the 3rd, blood, okay? All those samples yielded absolutely negative results. And this, for me, is a kind of an indicator. I'll go on. Matchroom, Top Rank, and the Quebec Commission, all sanctioned bodies involved, the WBC, the IBF, the WBO, and the Association of Boxing Commissions, the ABC, received notifications on all of the results of the anti-doping test Champions Beterbiev had taken, and therefore all the follow-up procedures. Right, now, Tony Bellew mentioned in the TalkSport interview that when you sort of starve the body and really deplete the body in a weight-waking process, and this is, talk to any professional bodybuilder, they'll tell you this. Once you start to lose weight and lose body fat, and you lose it in real drastic measures, where you start to lose tissue, you start to lose body fat, and in a lot of cases you can cause liver and kidney damage. But essentially, your hormone levels drop to the floor. Okay, now, when you look at this, when his raised levels were early mid to December, all right, and then on later tests through December and January, they kind of dropped what would be considered in between the normal range. Nowhere does it state that the levels spiked. So a spike can be up or down. So his levels stayed consistent. And for me, that there is kind of an indicator. Because if you were going to read into this, and again, there are no facts to prove he has taken anything. And I will reiterate, I don't take anything away from Beterbiev as the fighter. I'm a massive Beterbiev fan. I've said that, no, not hidden that subject. I'm a massive Beterbiev fan. I rate him very, very highly. But I just believe these needs to be looked at. Now, if you were looking at this in suspicion of someone who was putting in HGH and testosterone, and say you're going to put them in pre-training camp, but while you're training out of training camp, you're getting the benefits of putting these things in. Then going into training camp, you come off these substances. You will still carry the benefits, the physical benefits, what you obtain through training with the substances in your system at raised levels. You will carry into training camp, even though these are gonna reduce in your system to the point of not being there and not being traceable. So when you look at the dates and you look at the fact that by the time he was kind of in training camp, mid-December, early December, whatever, in and around sort of the start or the midpoint of the camp, the levels were high, but not high in the degree that they would be considered of an illegal use or an illegal administration. But they were certainly higher than normal. Then, as time towards fight goes on and he's now in full camp, levels drop back to normal, and they kind of stay around normal. Now, even if by the time he's sort of toward the end of the weight-making process, assuming that he doesn't have to really struggle to make weight, assuming he makes weight comfortable, which not many fighters who have to make a weight make it comfortably. Some do, you know, but at 38, you're getting older, you're finding it harder to shift weight or keep at a sustained weight. So his levels never spike. So during the weight-making process, they don't dip below a certain region either, according to these findings. So all you can look at it is, and again, I'm not accusing him of using these substances, but you have to be objective and look at the facts. And the facts are, early in the training camp or pre-training camp, his levels are higher than what would be considered in the normal range, but below what would be considered enough to, you know, insinuate that he's putting them in artificially. So I just think everything that Tony Bellew said, all the concerns he has, to me are justified. And don't we have to answer the question? Don't we have to look at the facts and the timescale, and just, we have to consider it at least, don't we? Shouldn't we do that as free-thinking individuals and fans of the sport? I don't know. I just thought all the hate that Tony Bellew is getting, and someone also at Tony Bellew said that Clomid, what Conor Benn was found as, and apparently, now whether this is true or not, there's been about a 15% range in professional athletes where Clomid is now being found in and being to be an issue. But more and more often, it's coming out and being proving it's there because of consumption of eggs. And I'm not an expert on the transition of eggs into clomiphene. You know, I know a bit about substances, and I know a bit about how substances are used. The egg ingestion, I'm not, you know, by no means an expert on, but Clomid is essentially a hormone regulator. You know, it brings hormones up to certain levels where they should be. And I've done a previous video on that, so I'm not going to go too much into that, but I've done a previous video into that. But there's a big difference between, and this is where Tony Bellew got shot down again. But he's correct, unfortunately, whether you like his argument or you like his stance, what he said is correct. You don't have to like it, but you do have to be objective enough to, you know, an adult enough to see, like, right, I don't like Tony Bellew, I think he's being biased, whatever, but I have to look at what he's saying, and what he's saying is correct. So there were raised levels, and then those levels dipped, and they didn't spike again. So you have to ask, why was the rise? I don't know. I've got, you know, I'm just being objective. I'm just seeing this how I see it. And like I say, I'm not calling Beterbiev. There's a bit of a discussion on how the correct pronunciation of Beterbiev or Beterbiev. I don't know. But I just have to point out, we have to go there. It has to be discussed, doesn't it? If there's an issue at all or the hint of an issue, surely we have to discuss it. But I'm a massive Beterbiev fan. He's a fantastic fighter. And you might give me shit for this, but as Tony Bellew said, I'm not calling him a drugs cheat. I'm just saying you do have to look at the facts that are presented and the evidence that are given to you by the testing board themselves. Yeah, so that was that. You know, don't know what you think. I'm sure you'll let me know. You can be vociferous when you want to, can't you, people? I've just watched Ade talking about the face-off of Ngannou and Joshua. I plan to do as I did with the Day of Reckoning press conference, the very first announcing press conference. I plan to sort of do a breakdown and cover the press conference, but quite honestly, there weren't really a lot to talk about, was there? It was a very subdued kind of affair. And I've got to say, and I put this on my community, and I believe now it was Mr. Turkey Milkshake, as Joe Sumner likes to call him. I'm sure it was Mr. Milkshake who gave it the name Knockout Chaos, but that is horrendous, isn't it? That's like an 80s arcade boxing game title, isn't it? Knockout Chaos. Come on, that is awful. But yeah, there was very little to say, weren't there? Joshua looked very businesslike. Ngannou is very confident, very quietly confident. He's very confident in what he says. He will quite happily tell you that he is going to win and stuff like that. I don't know if I missed something on this, but because Frank Warren was there, is Frank Warren almost subcontracting to Eddie Hearn? I might have missed this. I might be having a blonde moment. This might have gone over my head. Because was this a former Queensberry date? Or I just wonder what the extent of Frank Warren's involvement is, sort of heading the press conference. I'm sure you'll let me know. Like I say, that might have escaped me and completely gone over my head. I'm sure it's a very obvious answer to that. I'm sure you guys will let me know. But yeah, that was it. Who you got in that? You know, we're still thinking Joshua. Right then, a little system failure there. Let it be listeners who always charge your batteries before you start a video. The last thing I wanted to talk about on this little midweek sit down was we did get confirmed Joseph Parker against Zhang, which is a bit of a mouthwatering scrap, that one, isn't it, to come. We know Joseph Parker, I think the reason why Joseph Parker has got so much respect is he's fought everyone and will fight anyone. And he's now drawn the bogeyman of the division, isn't he? He's now drawn a guy that no one else wants to touch with a barge pole. Zhang, there's still room that, you know, we don't know how good Zhang is or is going to be, do we? You know, if we judge him on the two biggest names he's fought, Hrgovic, I've said on here a few times before, and people disagree with me, but I'm not convinced Hrgovic has got what it takes to be an elite. Until he proves it to me, I don't see it. I think he's awkward, he's cumbersome, he telegraphs his work badly when he's on the outside and at range. He's funny. He reminds me in terms of style and his cumbersome, awkward style. He reminds me very much of the big Pole Andrew Golota, who had the 2 wars and got disqualified in Chaos for Riddick Bowe. He reminds me very much of him. And Andrew Golota did some really strange things during the fights. And Hrgovic does that too. He's got that sort of that Huey Fury thing about him where he doesn't necessarily look like he wants to be there. Or he doesn't, so he shows disinterest. And as sort of times where he'll turn and walk away and kind of like not really act like he wants to be there. But Zhang, you know, people say Zhang won that fight. And I see sort of arguments for both. But sort of early to mid, it was Zhang, and then he took his foot off the gas. And I think the thing with Zhang is, I think you wish for him, for his sake, he was 10 years younger. You wish he'd reached this point in his professional career 10 years ago, because against Hrgovic, it did seem like he seemed to tire and needed to take time off. And then against Joyce, and again, a lot of people sort of don't like me for saying this, and I like Joyce. He's a lovely fella and he's a great guy. You can't not like Joe Joyce, but in terms of his ability, absolutely limited, like ultimately very limited. When your best asset and when the only thing people talk about you positively is the fact that you're good at getting hit and you take the shots well. By definition of that, you're limited, aren't you? Because that's all anyone talks about is the fact you get hit well. And at some point, and at Joyce's age, he was going to get hit well enough to put him out of there. And Zhang did that. Zhang certainly carries power. He's quick. His hands can be fast. He's technically very good. His feet are good for a big man. He's really cute with the sort of, he's got some really cute stuff that he does. A sort of little pivot away and throw the uppercut, or pivot and throw the hook close on the inside. He'll sneak shots and disguise them. You know, he's the boogeyman for good reason, isn't he? So, bless him, Joe Joyce. He takes on all comers, doesn't he? And like I said, he's got the bogeyman there. That is who you got. Let me know. I mean, especially after Parker's win against Wilder, I think opinions are going to be split on this, wildly. So, yeah, that was the last one I wanted to cover. Let me know what you guys think. I'd like to see a cross-section of who you think has got that, Zhilei Zhang or Joe Joyce. Like I say, Zhilei Zhang is, for me, yet to prove it at the top level. Joe Joyce is proven. He's proven quality. He's a proven... Joe Joyce. Sorry, if I said Joe Joyce, you know what I mean, Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker is a proven elite heavyweight operator, isn't he? That's not in doubt, is it? But, yeah, great fight. Let me know what you guys think. I shall see you all soon. I'm out.